Their focus on recruiting what has been called the old friends on Wall Street has been incalculably important to the Chinese Communist Party's whole agenda, because it has enabled them to have us bankroll their unrestricted warfare against us, among many other things. I mean, you go through the litany of horribles of what they're up to. Things, for example, like the Belt and Road Initiative. They're making these payday loans that are in fact colonizing, at my last count, something like 145 countries around the world, paying for infrastructure to be built with their financing, which then winds up being something that, like payday loans,
With loans that will never be paid back,
can't
which
be
then
paid back,
default to ownership by
which
the
means
CCP.
foreclosure on the assets, which means that you have now colonial presence and, as you say, dual use power projection options worldwide. That money, a good part of it at least, I think, is coming from the estimates vary, $3 to $6 trillion that has been moved by Wall Street, their old friends there, Larry Fink of BlackRock being a prime mover in this, from the American investing public, pension funds, 401k plans, exchange traded funds, index funds, mutual funds, and the like, from America, from patriotic investment purposes and others, to our mortal enemy, the Chinese Communist Party. This is continuing. Larry Fink not so long ago said we ought to triple the amount of investment we're making there. And this is essentially, I think, the United Front or the Ministry of State Security or the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Liberation Army, whoever you want to say is running this thing. It is of immense help to them in enabling them to try to destroy our country. And it has to stop. Jan.
Well, and there's this other element that, frankly, many people don't realize. They imagine that money is kind of interchangeable, right? So, but the thing is, once that money goes into China, that money is very, very hard to get out, right? In fact, when people try, it's almost impossible. So it kind of exists on paper for the companies that are doing the investing, but they don't actually have it.
They don't have it certainly in the form of actual shares of the companies they're investing in, some of which, by the way, have been sanctioned by the United States government, either because they are directly involved in the military threat buildup from China or humanitarian abominations that the Chinese Communist Party, and genocide and organ harvesting and all the rest. But notwithstanding the fact that they're sanctioned by the government, it's still possible to invest in them. The problem is you can't actually own a piece of the company for whatever that's worth. You get a share in some virtual entity in the Cayman Islands, which gives you no recourse at all when the Chinese simply say, sorry, you've just lost your money. We've just closed that company, or we've just turned it into something else. And that's without what's coming, Jan. If we are actually, no kidding, at war with China, those $3 to $6 trillion are written off. They're just gone. And the people who will be affected will not be so much Larry Fink or Ray Dalio or Steve Schwartzman or any of these other masters of the universe on Wall Street. They'll be Americans, American pensioners. And now they've gotten their mitts on, if you can believe this, federal government employees, military as well as civilian. They're moving their money into companies that are building weapon systems with which to kill those men and women in uniform. And Wall Street sees no problem with this. They say, well, as long as it's not illegal, we're going to continue to do it. What about betraying your country? What about contributing to its destruction? Do you have no interest? Do you have no concern? Do you have no responsibility to avoid that? I think they do. I think if they don't, I think if they persist in it, it is treason, for God's sake. And it ought to be treated as such.
The CCP certainly knew how to take advantage of our greed, right?
Well, we make no secret of our greed, so it's just a question of playing playing to those human frailties, but they do it systematically. They've made it into an industrial operation, and Peter Schweitzer's book about Red Handed is just the latest documentation of how they have perfected the practice of what they call elite capture. And it's not just Wall Street, sadly. It's not even just the business sector, because there's a lot of people importing goods from China that, again, help prop up the regime. It's academia, as we said. It's the Confucius Institute's patrons who like all that money coming in from all those students, 300,000 plus, that are paying full freight at our universities. That's, that matters to these colleges. Hollywood, the media. Again, coming back to what I started with, one of the reasons why Epoch Times is, I believe, the best media outfit in America today is most of the rest have been corrupted by the Chinese Communist Party. They are paid to put their propaganda in their papers or in their outlets.
I mean, in many cases, officially.
Well, absolutely.
But there's also these tools. To speak of these tools, right? It was the same thing in the Soviet Union. You had to make some agreements, and this is frankly a difficult thing for a journalist to get in to a regime. You have to make some agreements with them to play along, or they just won't let you in. So what do you do?
Academia, visas, and so on. Here's the thing. You made the comparison to the Soviet Union. I started with this riff about, the Soviet threat and what Reagan did in response to it. That was such a departure from what had been done by Nixon and Ford before him, and Carter, which was, just see what we could do to make the best deal with them that we possibly could, because they were the rising power. Kissinger and, Graham Allison and these likes had claimed that, no, we had no choice but to submit. They were pikers, the Soviets, compared to the Chinese Communist Party. The threat that they represented to us, and I was there in the Pentagon at the height of the Cold War. My job was dealing with the Soviet nuclear threat, and I'm telling you, it was nothing compared to what we now face in terms of the comprehensive threat, nuclear, by the way, among others, from the Chinese Communist Party. And yet we have persisted in this delusion that they're not at war with us, or that, for heaven's sakes, we can continue to do business with them, we can engage with them, we can prop them up, we can enrich them, we can make them more powerful, we can make them more dangerous without any danger to ourselves. It is madness. So that's where Team B3 comes in. What we're trying to do with this report now is to not see it just put on red on dusty shelves all over Washington and elsewhere, but rather to give it a living legacy with what we call the brief, which is something you've seen, and it's not terribly complicated. It just is a rendering of what it means that the people that we are now dealing with treat their own people horribly in every imaginable way. And I'm not just talking about the Uyghurs or the Tibetans or others that they consider to be inferior races. I'm talking about what they do to Han Chinese as well, by the millions. I mean, as you know, they have killed at least 100 million human beings out of the womb, and they claim they've killed 400 million still in the womb. This is unprecedented in the terms of man's inhumanity to man in the course of human history. It's a tell, and I know we agree feverishly about this. None of these people that they're doing business with should be under any illusion, the non-Chinese, including the Americans. If they succeed in securing victory over us and enslave us, I'm not even saying killing us off, but enslave us, do we have really any illusion that they will treat us better than they treat their own people?